CJ, I gotta just, and we'll get to the Oilers here. That would be the headline, but Maple Leafs fans must be incensed with how good Mitch Marner's been for Vegas here, right? Like, how's that going out there right now?
Oh, man, I think people are all in their feelings about it. I mean, look, Mitch Marner had a ton of fans in the Toronto area, too, over all his years. I mean, the guy had over 100 points last season as a Maple Leaf, so it wasn't as though he wasn't appreciated, but he also had 9 trips to the playoffs and never anything like what you're seeing right now in his 10th playoff trip with the Vegas Golden Knights. So I definitely think that people don't know what to feel about it. The whole league's dunking on Toronto with stuff like this, mentioning that, the one point I will mention is the Leafs tried to sign Mitch Marner. He chose to leave as a free agent. He was ready to leave, so,
right?
Yeah, but it wasn't like the organization drove him out of town, but maybe some of the things around the city, the fan base, the media contributed to him leaving.
Nice to get his thoughts on the goal, but no talking from Vegas last night. I know that's an attempt by John Tortorella to kind of maybe shelter his team, but does it not give more oxygen and more talking about it, the fact that they're not talking post-game?
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what happened there. I've heard maybe they were in a rush to get to the airport because there was some sort of airport, curfew or something on their takeoff. But, I mean, clearly it's not supposed to happen. I mean, I've been covering the game a long time, long before I had these white beard hairs, and I can't recall ever seeing a coach not speak after a game, and especially a big game like the one the Golden Knights played last night. So it's an unusual circumstance. I would expect the league will, levy some kind of fine against the Golden Knights organization because it's against the league's protocol, and they don't start till next Wednesday in the Western Conference Finals, so gives everyone something to talk about in the meantime.
Kris Johnston with us on the show. He's our GS Construction Hockey Insider today. It's been a very interesting week here in Edmonton. They do make it official yesterday with the coaching change. As Stan Bowman said multiple times yesterday, a thorough process determined essentially that coaching was an issue last year. But 9 months ago, they thought he was good enough that they gave him a 3-year extension that hasn't even kicked in yet. So, I mean, I just kind of described the whole week as clunky for the Edmonton Oilers. Do you think that's accurate?
Yeah, clunky, sloppy. You wouldn't want it to play out this way. I mean, I'm not surprised that Kris Knoblauch was fired. I have to be honest, even just being around the team a bit in round one, that seemed like a very distinct possibility to me, but you'd want to handle it in a way that's a little more seamless in this, a little more respectful to the time and effort the guy put into your organization, taking you to 2 Stanley Cups, respectful of the fact, he's got a family and kids, and, it just isn't nice to have it play out this way. But unfortunately, it's also the way things go sometimes in pro sports. I mean, players' names are in trade rumors, and just, there's all kinds of things that come with these jobs, but definitely can understand how the Oilers got to this spot. But, it was not handled in a way that I'm sure they're too happy with either.
I don't want to say they have to deliver Bruce Cassidy now, but I think a lot of people are expecting them to deliver Bruce Cassidy now, but there are other coaching jobs that are open. What do you think is going to be the biggest factor here for the Oilers to actually close a deal with Cassidy?
Well, the first thing would be securing the ability to talk to him. The fact that hasn't yet happened is kind of unusual. I have to believe that will eventually happen, though. Behind the scenes, that will be ironed out or dealt with. Beyond that fact, the Los Angeles Kings want to speak to Bruce Cassidy. LA is a pretty attractive place to live. I would say that that's certainly a roster I think most people, even without a stake in it, would say is further from being cup competitive than what the Oilers have at present time. But there's other things, lifestyle, financial considerations, depending what kind of contract they're offering, that would go into that decision. I think Bruce Cassidy, weirdly enough, is in a fantastic spot right now because it's clear he's Edmonton's top choice, and I think there is pressure to deliver him. There's pressure to, with the way, as I mentioned, everything kind of unfolded with Knoblauch. It's going to be kind of hard if they roll out someone else, even though there are other experienced coaches, whether it's a Laviolette or even Craig Berube or someone else that they may ultimately end up hiring if they don't get Bruce Cassidy. I think it would be kind of a weird first press conference knowing that likely wasn't their first choice. So, the first step is getting to talk to Bruce. I'm sure, whether it's Bruce or other candidates, they're going to want to, potentially even talk to some of the Oilers' top players because it's no secret. McDavid and Draisaitl in particular were, pretty openly critical of the organization or honest maybe about, where they were last season, what some of the things that went wrong. And I would think any coach that would come in there would want to at least have a conversation with those guys about, where things are at, how they see things before taking a job as well.
Stan Bowman's availability yesterday, I did kind of get the vibe that he thinks this roster is better than what Knoblauch got out of it. But he's also now, this offseason, basically tasked with saving the McDavid era by getting them back on track. The tough part for me is that they're kind of off track because of Bowman and Jeff Jackson. So how much pressure is on this guy after they get a coach in place to continue to deliver this offseason? Because I think this is probably a homer take, but I also think at worst it's one of the most top 5 critical off seasons in NHL history with any franchise. Is that an overstatement, do you think? And how do you expect him to handle it?
I don't think it is, because if you look across history, to have players as historically significant as what Draisaitl and McDavid have been at Edmonton, just all the individual awards that they've piled up, but, not to win a Stanley Cup. I mean, it's probably happened something similar to this, but nothing jumps immediately to mind, right? The Gretzky, Lemieux, Crosby era tier, even Ovechkin players in NHL history have all won a Stanley Cup where they were drafted or where they started their careers. And so, this next season I view as the last guaranteed one. It's not a prediction. I'm not trying to be one of these guys, running McDavid out of town from the Eastern time zone.
It's reality,
it's more,
man. You're talking about reality.
Yeah, exactly. It's just an honest take that if the Oilers are to go out in round 1 next year and have a similar regular season to this year, and it just doesn't seem like they're taking steps, I think we're having a very different conversation about McDavid's future, a year from now. So yes, I think that sets us up as a critical offseason. It's everyone in the organization has to view this as this is the last guaranteed year they have. I think it doesn't mean there won't be more beyond that, but I think it really is an all-in season. So that makes it an all-in off season. And, one thing I remember from Stan Bowman's actually first availability just right after the Ducks series, he did say he wasn't anticipating a huge roster changes, but he's got to make some key changes, even if it isn't volume. And that does put him in a tough spot heading into July, but this is what he's paid for. And obviously if you could just get back to the playoffs with everybody healthy, the Oilers have a pretty good chance. So if you can add around the margins of that to improve their odds, bring in a different coach that maybe has them playing a little better defensively, I would like Edmonton's chances heading into next year's playoffs.
What would you think is next for Kris Knoblauch? I mean, he is entering that extension, so there's no real rush on his part, but I know Dreger was talking yesterday about the Leafs are questioned about that position, but do you see this as something, I guess, the appetite for him, both now and moving forward?
Yeah, I think he's getting another job on his own timeline. I mean, it's pretty rare for a coach to be fired before his extension kicks in. What that means is he's literally got 3 guaranteed years of pay coming his way. So I think he can, afford to be a little bit picky or afford to take some time off if he feels he needs that. I mean, it's been a pretty hectic, start to his NHL career as a head coach. Going to those 2 cup finals, it wouldn't surprise me if he wants to survey the landscape a little bit, but given the successes that happened during his tenure in Edmonton, I have no doubt whatsoever that he'll have multiple teams with interest in him. And the Leafs, I think, make some sense. I just don't know if the timing will be right. It seems pretty quick. They're going to want to move through their coaching, carousel here, I think, pretty quickly. And, if you're Kris Knoblauch, it's such a unique opportunity to maybe just take a step back and figure out your next move a little more cautiously.
What do you think of Montreal last night and the way they handled Dovish? I mean, 3 goals on 4 shots, and you're sitting there going, man, early in this game like this and the way it's gone, maybe you pull the guy, and you saw a great shot of Marty St. Louis looking down the bench being like, but they stuck with him. He stops 32 straight after that, and they pick up the win. I saw that was a masterclass from St. Louis and his staff.
Yeah, this is how smart I am. I was watching the game on my couch, and I threw in my buddy's group chat, Dovish won't see the end of this game. And then, someone pointed out afterwards that I've had a lot of ice-cold takes in game during the playoffs. So maybe my buddies are going to start fading my predictions there in the chat. But, there's no other way to look back on it as actually a positive thing. Because obviously Dovish at times in this playoffs, I mean, he's he's had his A or A plus game. He's been really sharp, especially in that Tampa series. He delivered some big victories and was airtight in his play. He didn't have his A game, in what was a pivotal game in that series, Game 5 on the road, to allow 3 goals in the first period, but then to make 30 saves in a row or whatever it ended up being. I think that ends up being weirdly more of a confidence builder than if he had a pitch to shutout, because it is a reminder. It's almost like, I've been watching the golf here, the PGA Championship, but good golfers don't just score great when they have everything working. They also find a way through the tough rounds too. And that was clearly a tough game for Dovish. And now the Canadians have an opportunity they've been dreaming of to go home and close it out with a game at the Bell Center on Saturday night. It's going to be quite a spectacle there.
Hey, before I let you go, do you think Vancouver's got it right? It seemed like there was positive vibes coming out of Vancouver yesterday.
I don't think you can get it wrong with the Sedins if you're the Canucks. I mean, honestly, just top-tier humans, amazing players. They've continued to live in Vancouver, lifelong Canucks. I think it's good when you can hire those type of people to set the tone at the top of the organization. They've got a long way to go and as an organization, but I got the feeling from yesterday's press conference that they recognize that one of probably the best answers I heard is the fastest way to get there is to go slow and to not try to change course. Because if I look at the last 10 years of moves, back to the Benning era and the times with the Rutherford-Alvin pairing, like it just felt like they were forcing it all the time, trying to be a playoff team, trying to generate more revenue for the owner. I'm sure there's a lot of pressure at the ownership level there, but the Sedins are guys that I think can kind of push ownership aside and do what's right for the organization. And so, yeah, I do think they got it right. We'll see what Ryan Johnston has in the GM chair, but I love the idea of the Sedins running things at the top of the hockey operations pyramid.
As always, C, hey, who do you think you said you've been watching the PGA Championship? Scotty Scheffler. Did you know Scotty Scheffler has never led or been tied for the lead at a major after the first round? I saw that this morning. It kind of seemed crazy with how dominant he's been, but you think anybody stops him this weekend?
What's funny is I saw that same stat. I was like, that has to be wrong.
Right,
are we getting bogus stats? I mean, it's hard to bet against Scheffler now. I'm a big Rory guy, so I was not happy to see him at +4 after round 1. But yeah, I think it's got to be Scheffler's tournament. When he's at the top, he's just a shark, man.
Good stuff, CJ. We'll chat next week.
Okay, sounds good, guys.
There you go. That's Kris Johnston, who somebody did say Kris Johnston is harder than Drake.